David, let's talk a little bit about DoH. You passed something on to me that I think is quite interesting. You've been speaking about DoH for quite a while, and now we see things starting to, the rubber is hitting the road now.
Yep.
So what just happened? What is this announcement here that you pass on from CISA?
Well, the agency of the Chief Information Security officers of the Department of Homeland Security issued this memorandum to basically remind everybody, look, we have this system called Einstein. And Einstein is their filtering and security protection mechanism for federal government devices. Okay. And what it is an upstream DNS filter that basically sinkholes or blocks when devices are trying to access malware. And they're saying, wait a minute, this DoH thing is a problem. So let's take a step back and first talk briefly about what DoH is.
Yeah, so let's do DoH in 30 seconds.
So let's do a DoH lesson in 30 seconds. So DoH is DNS over HTTPS. Okay, and what makes this DoH is that it is now secured, it is encrypted, and it runs over TCP port 443. These are all important elements because we cannot just carte blanche block TCP port 443 because then we'll be blocking almost all of the internet. It's encrypted, so we cannot inspect it to see if the destination domain that a government or enterprise computer is trying to go to is malware or phishing. But it's secure, right? So we get this perception, which is the reality, that now that DNS query is no longer in clear text, it is actually encrypted. So this here is a good thing, and this here is a problem, and this here is a problem for the Department of Homeland Security, as it is for many businesses and enterprises.
Okay.
Let's talk about how it's being rolled out. So we'll see this being rolled out now by default in Firefox. So all United States installs of Firefox now, by default, have DoH installed on them. If you simply go into your system preferences, or I should say Firefox preferences, and you look at your network settings, you'll see that enable DNS over HTTPS is on by default.
Okay.
So without the user doing anything, the important thing is they were not given a choice. This was just done automatically without asking them.
Right.
So they don't even know in many cases that when they do a Firefox install, now they're circumventing, they're bypassing the previous established security boundary level.
Right, and this would be true for hospitals, schools, whoever, whatever, right?
Right.
Okay.
And that makes sense that's the reason why CISA said, alert everybody, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But why then DoH? I mean, I hear a lot of good things about the concept of actually encrypting information. I mean, I think that's a great idea. I think the idea of preventing people from sniffing what you're doing as you're going across the network, I think these are all good things. But so if that's good, but this is an artifact almost of something that's good, like how's this all playing out?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think it's worthy of doing a bit of a deep dive to understand that there are different dynamics from different user groups and technologists on the internet, right? So those that want to provide the end user, us individually, with protection had a really good idea in this. And here's why. So the last remaining bit of clear text information that was still visible to the internet service provider, who in many people's minds should just be a utility that carries traffic back and forth, but should not have visibility as to what's being carried back and forth, so that they're not tempted to monetize it by selling trending and tracking and advertising, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is good in that we don't want that information to be available to an ISP that we may not trust. And maybe it's the only ISP available, and we definitely don't trust them, so this is a really good thing in that case.
Sure.
The other thing to understand is that DNSSEC, which is a protocol that's been attempted to be developed and there's been many good proponents of it for 20 years, have tried to have it adopted, but we never achieved critical mass on DNSSEC.
Sure.
But DoH ends up being a completely different technology than DNSSEC, but also addresses the issue where a DNS question that says, where's google.com, and having the answer come back and intercepted, this actually addresses that same security risk where the DNS answer and question and answer is now not being intercepted in the most vulnerable part of a typical transit point, which is between you and the ISP and over a lot of the backbone. So these are the good reasons why DoH is good for security and privacy.
Okay, but you are sort of moving from, now it's not the ISP that can see it, now it's Cloudflare, now it's Google, right?
Right.
So, and what's the approach there?
Right. And so what's happening now as a result of that is another dynamic is that it shifts the fundamental decentralization of the internet and makes it now more centralized, right? And it's more centralized in the hands of public companies like Cloudflare and Google, right? To some people, that is a reason for concern, for sure.
Okay, and what about the impact? So how does that essentially impact individuals, and how would that impact an organization, right?
Right. So an individual, my mom, who experiences really good ad blocking and malware blocking in her home, if she installs Firefox now, it automatically walks around the filter like I explained earlier without her even knowing it. So it impacts her because now she does not have the gateway level protection that she had before. There are people who are running pie holes in their home. They're running a DNS firewall from some enterprise vendor. Yeah. All of those are now being circumvented in the business.
And kids in school. Kids in school. I mean, it's not going to take very long for them to realize that there's no fence anymore, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then, and in business, so you'd end up having people going places where in the past there was just a fence there. It was okay for them to lean against the fence. Now there's no fence anymore, right? What's the other impact that you think it will have for business?
So for business, you're going to have an impact where a lot of the anti-phishing and anti-malware defenses that were in place before, utilizing DNS filtering as a mechanism, just evaporated. They've disappeared. If for, again, the same reason, because it's just bypassing the security fence.
So what do people, network administrators or people who are responsible for protecting other people, what do you do in the short term? What do you do right now?
Well, before I answer that, maybe we can talk about what the future holds in the midterm, in the medium term.
Okay.
And that is the following: that you can now have theoretically any app developer on a smartphone, protected or not, the app developer can now say, we're not going to use DNS. Just like Firefox did in the browser, say, we're not going to use the system's DNS anymore.
Okay.
The app developer can do the same. So the important thing to understand is that Cloudflare and Google are not the only DoH providers. Theoretically, it could be any web server in the world with a few clicks of an install of a DoH-compatible DNS server could offer that service. So every single one of your apps could have their own DoH provider. Right. That is what is coming up in the medium term. And what this means is that the firewall administrator that might today say, we'll just block 1111. Yeah. We'll block 1001 and 1113, 1112, all the other Cloudflare variations. But that only blocks those ones. We don't know who else is a DoH
So it's really the same old whack-a-mole game. Yes. That happened with domains is now just going to happen directly with IP addresses. Do I understand it correctly?
Well, in a way, yes. But because we now don't know who is serving DoH, it could be anybody serving DoH. Right. So that's why all of our traditional means of tools of saying we'll block DoH by blocking by destination, that's not a viable solution at all.
Right.
So that's what we're faced with. But there are some short-term mitigation that you're asking about. The short-term mitigation is that the biggest providers, especially Google and Cloudflare, can be blocked. Any system administrator can do this today by implementing firewall rules to say, block any traffic going to that destination. That is a short-term, but very short-term, again, because anybody can develop their own, right?
So what about other guys? Like these are the big guys that you know about, but as I think you explained to me before, there's other people that can be doing this as well.
Right, and because it's not possible for anybody to host their own DoH server at any IP address anywhere, we could have billions of other DoH servers coming online and available, and you'll never be able to know which one. So for example, if I were to go to Firefox here, just because it defaults to using Cloudflare, if I launch it here and I say go into preferences here and scroll all the way down to network settings, if I'm looking at the enabled DNS or HTTPS, which is on by default with Cloudflare, they have one other provider there, NextDNS, but they also have custom.
Sure.
So now I can basically specify that I have something here, right? And apply that. Now I have just like that used someone else yet that's not been published as a DoH provider. Could be any IP address, it could be any domain name.
So the method really is now another memo needs to be sent out with a new address, right? And another memo, and another memo, and another memo. Okay, so again, you're behind the bad, in this case, chasing the problem,
That's right.
never actually arriving to a solution. So how is this actually done right? How do you solve this?
The right way to do DoH is to capitalize on all the security and privacy it has to offer, while maintaining your corporate security posture and have it verifiably enforceable and enforced. That's the right way to do it. Really, the long-term solution is the don't talk to strangers piece.
Okay.
Don't talk to strangers, in a nutshell, is where all traffic that wasn't resolved by the corporate DNS is not allowed. So therefore, any attempt at using any other DNS simply doesn't work, period. That's the simplest way to think about it.
Right. Okay. And can you actually demo how that actually how that works?
Absolutely. So in here, I'm running a computer that is behind Don't Talk to Strangers right now. And so if I ask it as I normally would on a normal course of a day, I would say, where is google.com using the dig command? I will immediately get my IP address and everything works as it should. But if I ask Cloudflare now, and say, where is google.com, what do you expect should happen? Probably this, if you're properly protected and if you are compliant and DoH is not allowed at the endpoints. So then this is what you're going to get, is you're trying to query any DoH by IP address anywhere on the internet, and it will simply say no servers can be reached.
Okay, but so that doesn't make sense. So just to say, okay, well, we're blocking DoH, that's the midterm solution.
Yeah, but we're not blocking DoH here, because if we take a look at our rules here, our rules, this happens to be a Don't Talk to Strangers implementation on top of a current version of pfSense, just one of the platforms that we support. But you'll see that there is no rule anywhere on here that says block DoH or block HTTPS or block 1111. It just doesn't happen that way. It happens to be blocked because we're asking someone for a DNS answer that is not the system-provided DNS resolver. And this is why Don't Talk to Strangers is the perfect enforcement for a policy that governments and corporations already have.
And in future, or right now, we know that, so this is the short-term mitigation, but going forwards, to actually have DoH, will Don't Talk to Strangers actually allow that or facilitate that to actually happen? How would that be?
Absolutely. So what you do is you simply offer a DoH server to the endpoints that is your own corporate security infrastructure. So the endpoint asks a DoH query to your corporate infrastructure, which in turn forwards the DoH query to their provider of choice over DoH. Now you get all of the privacy and security that you're looking for, because there's no way that anywhere on the wire or anywhere in transit between the endpoint and your corporate security infrastructure, from the corporate security to the upstream DoH provider, there's no way there can be a man in the middle. There can be no interception. There can be no manipulation. You get the security, you get the privacy from your ISP, but you also now get compliance.
Right. Okay.
So the way you solve it with Don't Talk to Strangers in an environment, if we were to use this very specific use case of the Department of Homeland Security CISOs that are now required to use Einstein, their internal DNS filtering mechanism, with Don't Talk to Strangers, but they also want to provide all the security and privacy that comes with DoH, there is a way to do that.
Okay.
So with our technology, here's how you would go about it. Okay, let's call this the endpoint.
Okay.
So this could be a computer, a phone, whatever, has the capability of doing DoH. So what you do is you have it asking the corporate DNS resolver, right? So this would be like your Active Directory environment. It would be your DNS internally that's doing the internal DNS filtering. But you can now offer this as DoH, meaning that from the endpoint to the corporate infrastructure, anything on that wire is now totally encrypted.
Okay.
Now you have this going upstream to Einstein, which is their preferred and legally required environment, also can be done over DoH. You now get the clean and beautiful encryption and privacy going from the endpoint to the local DNS all the way to Einstein and back.
Oh, okay.
So the only time that a query now exits in the clear is if from there it goes over to the internet for something that Einstein isn't aware of yet. This here will only be DoH when the whole internet is DoH enforced, but it isn't yet. So this will be the clear text part. So this is as good as you're going to get, but you now also have the 100% policy enforcement taking place at each premise. And it doesn't matter if a new Firefox comes on the scene tomorrow with a 1.2, .3, .4. It doesn't matter if this endpoint tries to go to 2.3, 4.5 or DNS.Google. It doesn't matter because none of those are reachable if they're not first going through the corporately sanctioned policy.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good.
And all of these bits and pieces work like Lego.
Right,
My son's favorite toy.
Right.
Yeah.
So essentially, Don't Talk to Strangers is just a piece of Lego that can be added into this chain. So now you don't have to hope to try to solve this by sending memos out. Okay. And so now you either have to be a person of great faith and do a lot of praying and hope that people aren't, that they're going to actually follow your memos and you can push enough memos out fast enough, or you actually have technology that makes this implementable, and that's where we are now. So it's really exciting.
Absolutely.